Are you planning to move to the Oklahoma City area and can't quite decide which suburb best suits you? All too often I speak to folks who've made the trip out here only to find out it's a much larger metropolitan area than they expected. Coming out to OKC without a plan will often leave people feeling less informed than before they came out. And the truth is, each OKC suburb kind of has its own flavor. It's like a giant buffet, minus that really weird Jell-O salad. Seriously, don't eat that stuff.
What kind of monster?
So in this video, we're gonna run over some of the most popular suburbs here in the OKC Metro, so you'll be prepared to pick the best suburb for you here in OKC. Let's hop in. Thanks so much for joining me here today. On this channel, I talk about all things Oklahoma City and its surrounding suburbs, of which there are many. With nearly 1.4 million people living in this widespread metro, there are frankly too many suburbs to dive into each and every one. Seriously, there's like 17 or 18 depending on who you ask. So today we're mostly gonna focus on kind of the major ones: Yukon, Edmond, Moore, the Village, well, because that's where I live, Norman, Mustang, and a couple other small town favorites. But first, if you're thinking of moving to the Oklahoma City area, whether it's in the next few weeks or few months from now, I would absolutely love the opportunity to help make a smooth move right here to OKC. You're gonna find my contact information in the description below, so please feel free to shoot me a call, a text, or an email, or even better, click the link below to schedule a one-on-one video call with me so that we can discuss how I can help you buy that perfect home right here in OKC. Now that that's out of the way, let's try to find the best suburb for you and your family. First stop on the OKC suburb tour, Yukon. Now, before you ask, no, not the Canadian territory near Alaska. Though, if you stand outside during certain parts of the winter with your eyes closed, you can pretend. So who is Yukon a good fit for? Well, it's said that Yukon is a perfect blend of small town charm mixed with a little bit of suburban convenience. So for those of you who don't want to live in the day-to-day city noise, it could be for you. With only 27,000 residents, Yukon really is kind of perfect for those who want a small town feel. Let's talk about some pros. Yukon is definitely family friendly. This place is like one giant PTA meeting, except without that one parent who takes every minor issue and turns it into a national crisis. I mean, come on, Pam. The kids are gonna be fine now that the pizza's no longer rectangular. I digress. Yukon is booming with families, and one of the reasons is because they really have great schools. And it also helps, my next pro, is that they have affordable housing. So a recurring theme you'll find throughout most of these suburbs is the affordable price of homes. So what I'll try to do is include the median price point for each. Speaking of, the median price point over in Yukon is around $270,000, and depending on where you're moving from, I think most of you would consider that a plus. Especially you California folks, I know you guys are basically selling organs on the black market for homes. Relax, Mom, it's a joke. Another thing I definitely consider a pro is that Yukon is located only about a 20-minute drive to downtown Oklahoma City, which basically just means you can be close enough to the action without living right in it. On that note, one of the cons is the commuting that you may have to take if you live in Yukon, which most of the people who live in Yukon do work in Oklahoma City. So for many of you, that might mean daily commutes. Not that it's the worst because it is so close, but for some people, the drive back and forth adds up to enough time, it's a little frustrating. Another thing some people might consider a con is that it's a little bit quieter in Yukon. But some people consider this a pro. So for someone who thrives on the hustle and bustle of living in the city, Yukon may not be for you, or it may just seem a little too peaceful. And for that reason, some younger adults might find Yukon a little bit boring. Next up, let's talk about Moore, where affordability meets convenience. Moore is kind of like that younger brother who, is a lot of fun, but somehow seems to always be standing awkwardly right behind you. Oh wait, that was me. Anyway, Moore is just to the south of Oklahoma City, kind of has its own vibe. So who is Moore, Oklahoma a good fit for? Well, let's talk about some pros. Moore has a great public school system that's always rated pretty high. So if you have kids and you like to show off those proud parent of an honor student bumper stickers, Moore's got your back. And another pro, continuing the theme of affordable homes, Moore has even more affordable homes in Yukon, coming in at a median price point of $240,000. But unlike Yukon, Moore kind of has a ton to do with a lot of different restaurants and shopping and the legendary Warren movie theater. Trust me, if you're down there, you gotta check it out. It's very retro and super cool. Kind of makes normal movie theaters seem like cheap dollar movie theaters. You remember those? And another pro of Moore is that it's not only close to Oklahoma City, but just to the south, it's also very close to Norman. So within a short drive, you can be in one of either of those two cities, which both have a very different vibe. Now, touching on some quick cons, something worth mentioning is kind of the negative reputation that Moore has regarding tornadoes. Now, there really isn't any evidence to suggest that there's a higher probability of tornadoes in any one part of the OKC metro, but since there have been two two really devastating tornadoes that have come through Moore within the last 25 years, it's gotten this reputation of being more tornado prone than other areas. So it's possible that association alone will be enough to scare you off, and it does to some. There is no convincing them otherwise. Much like Yukon, many people drive in and out of OKC for work when living in Moore. And I would argue that drive is probably more difficult in Moore. And overall, there probably is an argument that Moore has more traffic than some of the other suburbs. With around 63,000 residents, that's kind of part of what comes along with living in one of the larger suburbs. Alright, this one is plainly self-serving. Guilty as charged. The Village has been my home for right at 20 years, so I might be a teensy bit biased. So who's the Village a good fit for? Well, everyone from first-time homebuyers to single folks, younger couples with no kids or smaller families, or anyone enjoying the perks of living in a great, centrally located small suburb. I mean, if I think it's cool, that's gotta be worth something, right? Right?
Yeah, totally.
So let's dive into the pros of the Village. One is its great location. You're right next to Nichols Hills, so you get the perks of an upscale neighborhood, but without the price tag. It's also not too far from Edmond. For a lot of people, that is definitely a perk. And it's right near a ton of different grocery and shopping options, and one of my favorite places in the city, Lake Hefner. What's also great about the Village is it's got that neighborhood charm. It kind of feels like one big neighborhood, which makes a lot of sense. There's only 10,000 people living here in the Village. Neighbors are always waving at you. There seems to be always somebody walking a dog, at least here on my street. Another pro, when it comes to homes here in the Village, you get a lot of charm for your money here. Most homes have that kind of mid-century feel, which really is real estate speak for cute, but maybe too small for some. Don't get me wrong, there is a good range of home sizes here, but the number of homes that are under 1,500 square feet is a lot of the reason that the median price point sits right at about $225,000. Now, reminder, I am a little biased, but the only con I could really think of is that the homes are a little too small for some people or families. As I mentioned, most homes here are under 1,500 square feet, and there are certainly some homes that are bigger than that. But if having a home that's larger than 3,000 or 4,000 square feet is the goal, the Village may not be the best fit for you. All right, let's head a little bit further south to Norman, home of the University of Oklahoma, and honestly, Norman has a pretty different vibe than the rest of the OKC Metro. So who is Norman a good fit for? Well, college students, and really anyone enjoying the college town vibe, and really any family who enjoys living in an area with the amenities you would find in a larger suburb with nearly 130,000 residents. Now, one of the pros for many people is the college town vibes. With OU right there, the energy in Norman definitely is very young and vibrant. There's always something going on between sports, concerts, or even some festivals. And beyond that, something that families really like about Norman, once again, is that they have great schools. And Norman public schools really are pretty top-notch. But if your kid's not going to go to OU after growing up in Norman, they better have a really good excuse. And another bonus for some families who really like Norman is that there's kind of a wide range of different homes and neighborhoods. Whether you want a more classic home with a big yard for the kids, or a property with a big lot, or something brand new in a growing neighborhood, Norman definitely has kind of all of those. And with a median price point of right around $275,000, that's a price point that's going to sound appealing to many of you watching this. Getting some quick cons about Norman, well, I always mention game day traffic, and this is something that'll be challenging living in really any college football town. It's definitely not the worst con to have, especially if you love football, but if you don't, those 6 or 7 days a year can seem pretty agonizing. And another con for some is that Norman is just further from OKC than any other suburb. So if you're not down for a 30 to 35 minute commute into downtown OKC, it can feel like a world away. To be honest, some Norman residents don't even care to come to OKC, but Norman is just a little too far for this OKC guy. Moving on to Mustang. And no, you won't find wild horses running through the streets, but Mustang is growing fast and turning into a bit of a family favorite. With around 22,000 residents, Mustang is sort of the smaller sibling to Yukon, and with a smaller vibe. And much like Yukon, Mustang is a good fit for families or those who enjoy a slower paced life, which kind of leads us into the first pro, which is the small town feel. Mustang's vibe is like a Norman Rockwell painting, but with way more minivans. Quiet, safe, and a great place to raise a family. And hopefully you're not getting tired of hearing about this, but another pro is affordable housing. With a little more bang for your buck than Yukon, it comes in slightly lower with a median price point for a home at $265,000. Not unlike other suburbs on this list today, another pro of Mustang is the great public schools, which continues to add to the reasons why it's a good fit for families. And just a couple of quick cons. There's going to be limited entertainment options in Mustang. Mustang is quiet, and maybe for some, too quiet. If your idea of excitement is a wild Friday night, then Mustang may not be it, but that is something people dig about Mustang. And another small con is that it's a little bit of a further drive into downtown Oklahoma City with about 25 to 30 minute drive. So a little further than Yukon, not quite as far as Norman. But if you're working in OKC, definitely something to consider. Now, here in the OKC metro, there are a ton of small town suburbs. So if you're looking for that rural, small town feel that's even smaller than that of Yukon or Mustang, you know, one where you can hear the crickets chirping at night, and I don't mean from some of these terrible jokes that I tell, then maybe some of these smaller town suburbs might be your jam. And really, there's quite a few that have fewer than 15 to 20,000 residents. There's Choctaw, Spencer, Tuttle, Piedmont, there's Purcell, Blanchard, Noble. I mean, really, there's a ton. We could go on and on. But some pros of living in these areas is that you're gonna feel like there's just more area to breathe. Drives between destinations are gonna have more open land and some cow pastures. And there's generally lower price point for homes. But there's also usually fewer homes to choose from. As for cons, well, for most people, there's usually not a whole lot to do. And if you want to go do something, there are longer drives to the big city, which is probably pretty comical for you to think of OKC as the big city if you live in a much larger city, but you get what I'm saying. And next, we talk about the very popular Edmond, the golden child of the OKC suburbs. If these suburbs were in high school, Edmond would certainly be voted most popular, and maybe even most likely to steal your girlfriend. I have no idea what that means. We're gonna go with it. So who is Edmond a good fit for? Well, mostly it's gonna be families with some of the very best schools in the state of Oklahoma, which certainly is the first pro, which is top-notch schools. Because again, Edmond public schools are consistently rated some of the very best in the state. So if you've got yourself some future doctors, lawyers, or engineers, Edmond will probably set them up for success. Another pro is that Edmond has a wide range of beautiful neighborhoods. There are a ton of options from classic tree-lined streets to a ton of brand new communities. So there's really something for everyone's taste. Another pro to Edmond is that there's just lots to do. Edmond has a ton of parks, shopping, restaurants, you name it. It's like the choose your own adventure of suburbs. And all of this is why Edmond has around 100,000 residents and growing. Now, one of the cons of Edmond is going to be the higher cost of homes. So while they do have a ton of beautiful neighborhoods, they are a bit pricier. With a median price point of a little over $350,000, you can see why Edmond doesn't make sense for everyone. Another con of Edmond is definitely going to be the traffic. Edmond's growth comes with the growth of traffic. So if you've got yourself some road rage, maybe consider some yoga classes. I could definitely recommend some good ones, so just let me know. And speaking of Edmond, if you'd like to check out a more in-depth pros and cons of this popular suburb, you'll definitely want to check out this video right here. And as always, guys, until next time, I certainly hope to okay. See you soon. See ya.